So today we're gonna give Windows 11 a Halloween costume. But unfortunately, this video is gonna come out a couple days after Halloween. But it'll still be worth it, because since we have a new version of Windows 11, it's time for a new video on how to make it not look like Windows 11. Hopefully though, this video doesn't get taken down. Stay tuned. You know, I just have to say, I really love doing these videos. Making Windows look like something it's not meant to look like is just kind of fun, really. I don't know why. And apparently, you guys like them too, because these videos always seem to do really well. I still get people commenting on the first video I ever did on this subject. But just for the YouTube AI, this video is for educational purposes only and doesn't violate any copyright or promote piracy in any way. We're just having fun here, all right? And it turns out some people really hate the way Windows 11 looks. Either way, that's what we're doing today. But I gotta pay some bills, so check out today's sponsor. Are you still running Windows 11 unactivated because the license just costs too much? Then you should check out today's sponsor, VIP SCD Key, where you can get a valid Windows 11 license for around $20. Stop dealing with that stupid watermark and actually be able to change your desktop background with a valid license for Windows 11. Just go to the link in the description below and pick up a valid Windows 11 license key. During checkout, use the code CYBERCPU for a 25% discount. Once you have your key, go to your activation settings in Windows 11 and click the link that says Change Product Key. Enter the product key you just purchased and hit Activate. Now you don't have to deal with that stupid watermark. And check out the description for deals on not just Windows, but Office too. Now, on with the video. So, from the very beginning of these guides, my goal has been to show you how to completely change the look and feel of Windows without spending a dime. Yes, I'm well aware that there are retail options to achieve this, but my entire goal is not just to send you guys off to spend some money for a program that you can click one button and make your computer look different. But if you want to do that, then great, more power to you. You don't need me to make a video about how to do it, but I actually have done several videos on those options as well. But many of them are really, really good options. But the point of this video is to show you how to do the same thing for completely free. But it's going to take a little bit of work on your part. Now, unfortunately, we can't change every single aspect of Windows 11 because there's just technical limitations to doing that. But we can change the surfaces of Windows that you use on a daily basis. And to the uninitiated, it will look almost indistinguishable from Windows 10. So let's jump on the system and I'll show you how to do it. All right, so here we are in Windows 11. This is Windows 11 25H2. If we go into System right here and scroll down to About, as you can see, we are on 25H2. So this should be the latest feature pack, as long as no updates came out between me recording and this video being live. This should be the latest version of Windows 11. So the first thing we're gonna need, obviously, if we're gonna make a computer look like Windows 10 for free, is obviously Explorer Patcher. We're gonna go ahead and click on Latest here to grab the latest. And luckily, Windows Defender no longer flags Explorer Patcher. So it looks like their fight with Microsoft is finally over and we can move on and start enjoying the program again. But from what I've noticed is a lot of the little bugs that I've seen previously just aren't present anymore. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scroll down. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the EP Setup EXE right here, and it'll go ahead and download the program. And then from here, we can open it up. We can go ahead and close Chrome now. And the next thing we do is just install the program. Now, what you're gonna notice is you're gonna see this Windows Protected Your PC, this Defender Smart Screen comes up. We're gonna click on More Info and hit Run Anyway. And this is essentially just because Explorer Patcher isn't a signed executable. We're gonna go ahead and hit Yes to user account control, and your screen should go black for a second and come back exactly the way it looked before you clicked Start. However, what you'll notice is if you right click on your taskbar, you'll get a lot more settings that you didn't have before. And you can go ahead and click on Properties, and this will open up the properties for Explorer Patcher. Now, some people might be a little apprehensive about installing Explorer Patcher because unfortunately, like I said, it hasn't always been the most stable program available. It has definitely gone through some growing pains and has had to deal with essentially a war with Microsoft. But luckily, it has not only won that war, but has gotten incredibly stable in recent versions. It's no longer detected as malicious software by Windows Defender, which I think was an extremely unfair act of censorship on Microsoft's part against an otherwise amazing program. However, even though it's running really stable at the moment, it's still a program created by an independent developer and still could have problems from time to time. I mean, it's literally written by a dude in his spare time, and it's funded entirely through donations. So if you like the program, I highly recommend donating to the project. But with that said, there are still some things that you need to keep in mind when running Explorer Patcher, essentially concerning Windows updates. But we'll get into that a little bit later on in the video. Some things in Explorer Patcher have changed for the better too. So don't click off if you think you've already seen this video before. For now, though, let's jump back on the system and I'll show you how to use this program to make your system look like Windows 10. The first thing we're going to do is look at the taskbar section. And this is what changes the actual taskbar where all your icons and start menu and everything is located. So since we want to make it look like Windows 10, we're going to go ahead and change that to Windows 10 Explorer Patcher. And then once you do that, you can go ahead and hit this little link down at the bottom to restart File Explorer, and it should restart with Explorer Patcher. Now, sometimes when you restart Explorer, it takes a little while for the icons to show back up. And this honestly is not a bug in Explorer Patcher because I've had the same thing happen with other customization programs. Personally, I think this is a bug in Windows itself because Windows isn't usually used to people force restarting Explorer. It might just be a problem with Explorer coming back after it's been force restarted. But luckily, it always eventually comes back. It just sometimes takes a little while, so you might have to wait on it. In fact, you'll probably see that later on in this video. So as we go through here, the first step we're going to go to is we're going to go down to the search box itself. So as you go down to the settings, I'm not going to go over every single setting in here. I'm just going to go and highlight the ones that I think would be the most important for making your computer look like Windows 10 or just making your system look better. And when it comes to the search box, I hate the search box in Windows 10 and 11, so I always hide it anyway. So I go ahead and hide it there and it'll be easy. Also, another setting that a lot of people have mentioned is the always combine or the never combine for the icons themselves. And what this is right here is when you open like two copies of the same program, like I'm gonna go ahead and open two copies. As you can see, those two copies are both combined. So they'll show up just like this. However, if you turn this off, if you tell this to never combine, then it will give you an icon representation on the taskbar for each specific app instead of having just the one icon. But personally, I actually kind of like to always combine it. So I go ahead and do that just to make my taskbar look a little bit cleaner because sometimes I have a lot of stuff running on my taskbar and I couldn't even imagine what would happen if I filled it up. But if that's the situation with you too, you can have combine when full. So once the taskbar fills up, then it will start combining to save space. But either way, when it comes to that, I usually always combine because I think that's the best setting, but you do whatever setting you think is the best setting for your system. And also on this topic too, you can always go to taskbar settings and make these changes from within the taskbar settings themselves. Like for instance, I almost always turn off task view, widgets, and things of that nature as well. And we're gonna have to go through and change the center alignment as well, because right now if we click the start button, it's gonna open in the middle even though the button's all the way on the left. But we're gonna go ahead and change that in the program later on. But you also have access here to change it here if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and close settings here, and we're going to move on to System Tray, the next setting inside of Explorer Patcher. Now, there's some things that you may or may not want to do here. Like for instance, if you're trying to get a real genuine look for Windows 10, then there's some things that you might want to disable. Like for instance, the Control Center button, which actually is this little button right here. It's this little wheel cog right here that allows you some of the more specific Windows 11 settings. Now you can turn that off just by checking this, and then of course, restarting File Explorer, which I'll do real quick. Hopefully it'll come back. It did, it came back right away, good. And then as you can see, that little cog is gone. However, by doing that, you're actually limiting yourself from not being able to use, at least not be able to use easily, some of those different features for Windows 11. So personally, I would just recommend leaving this one turned on, but it's totally up to you. Now, the next thing that I wanted to show you from this section, I think is really, really cool. And that's right here where it shows choose open network and internet settings when right clicking on the network icon should open. Now, as of right now, if I right click on the network icon and hit open network and internet settings, it goes to settings, not control panels. And I don't like that. So what you can do in Explorer Patcher is you can change that to network and sharing center in control panels. And by doing that, now we'll go ahead and right click and open it, and you get right to the network and sharing center, and usually right to that one, because that's usually the one everyone wants to click. But either way, and I really like the fact that we have the ability to do that with the Explorer Patcher taskbar. Now, with that said, we're gonna go into File Explorer now. Like I said, I'm not going through every single setting, but you can go ahead and go through all these settings in your own time, and a lot of them are really good. I just didn't have time to fit them all into this video. So the first setting that I would change is to register File Explorer as a shell extension. And the reason why is because there's certain changes that we make within File Explorer that if we don't register it as a shell extension, it won't apply to other like save and save as dialog boxes and stuff like that. So I would recommend registering it as a shell extension before you move on further. And then the next one is the disable the Windows 11 context menu. So essentially what that one is right there is it's this menu right here. And you guys all know that I hate it. So by disabling the Windows 11 context menu, it will give you the old-fashioned Windows 10 context menu. In fact, we'll go ahead and restart Explorer real quick and we'll go ahead and try that out. So as you can see, as you right click now you have the old context menu, the way God intended it to be. And one thing that I may not have mentioned earlier is the reason why I'm restarting Explorer on some settings but not others is if you go through here, if you look at the ones that have the little stars after them, like for instance, on these ones, the double stars means that it has to be registered as a shell extension for that to apply properly. But the single stars right here essentially just mean that you have to restart File Explorer in order for that setting to take effect. The ones that don't have stars, you can just check and it works fine. And then when you come down to right here where it says control interface, what the control interface is it's actually the ribbon up on top right here. Obviously this is the Windows 11 look with tabs and things of that nature on it. But what we want is we want the Windows 10 versions. I'm going to change this one to the Windows 10 ribbon bar. However, you can also use the classic with the address bar, or you can even use the Windows 7 command bar. But we're going to use the Windows 10 ribbon. And because this has a little star on it, it means we have to restart File Explorer for it to take effect. So now that we restarted File Explorer, as you can see, my icons didn't show up. So this is that bug that I was telling you about. And sometimes they come fairly quickly, and sometimes you gotta wait for a minute for them to come back. And unfortunately, like I said, I'm pretty sure this is a bug in Windows because I've experienced it with other customization programs before, not just Explorer Patcher. But I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead until it comes back, and I'll let you know about how long it took. Okay, so that was actually pretty quick. All I did was pause it, turn around, take a drink of water, and come back, and it was already back. So didn't take too long, but it is an annoyance, especially when you're going through and testing out different settings. Having it take so long to come back is really annoying. So anyway, where we were is we were looking at File Explorer. So if we launch File Explorer real quick, as you can see now, this is the Windows 11 command bar that has the regular ribbons and stuff on it. And if you don't want them always to be accessed, it's exactly the same as Windows 10. You just click this little button right here to make them disappear, and then you can open them just like you would a regular ribbon menu, and then they just don't appear when you don't want to look at them. Okay, so finally, the next one, and I'm sure the one that everyone's been waiting for, is the Start Menu section. Because, as I showed you before, we still have the center-mounted Windows 11 Start Menu, even though we've moved our Start button all the way to the left, which makes it a little cumbersome to use, to be honest. However, we can easily change that now by going from Windows 11 to the Windows 10 Start Menu. And we can go ahead and hit Restart Explorer in order for that to take effect. And as you can see, we're suffering from that bug again. So I'm gonna skip ahead until the icons show up. Okay, so we're back now. So as you can see, we click the Start button and it is the Windows 10 Start menu. However, it's still in the middle of the screen, which is a little weird seeing the Windows 10 Start menu in the middle of the screen. But we can change that right here from the position. You can go to Center to at Edge of Screen. And then when we click on it, it'll open in its proper location. And I know we're trying to make this look like Windows 10, and Windows 10 has sharp corners, doesn't have round corners. So what we can do is we can go down and we can change the corner preference right here. So if we want, we can actually have a floating menu with round corners on the Start menu. So if we clicked on that, as you can see, now we have round corners on the start menu. So we can have kind of a hybrid Windows 10, Windows 11 look. Or if you don't like it floating, you can also make it docked with the round corners as well, which I actually kind of like the look of this. But if you guys want the straight Windows 10 look, then you can always change that to not rounded. And then when you click on it, you'll see the sharp corners like Windows 10. Now you may notice though that we still have round corners on our applications. And in fact, if we open File Explorer, you'll see we also still have round corners. And we'll get to that a little bit later because trust me, we're going to change that too. But while we're here in the start menu, I also wanted to show that if for anyone who likes Windows 8 and like the look of Windows 8, not sure why you would, but just in case you did, you can have the Windows 8 start menu as well, just by going to display mode here and changing it to full screen. So when you click full screen, you hit yes, because in that case, it has to actually write that to the registry in order to make it to work. That's why it needs administrator permissions. But then when you click on the start button, it doesn't do anything. Oh, because I didn't change the display mode. Why did I only change it to start menu? Oh, I meant full screen start. Okay, that's making a mistake. All right, so we click there. Now when we click on start, as you can see, we're in full screen mode. Similar to Windows 8, you can still kind of see through it. It's the Windows 10 full screen start menu, but it's about as close to Windows 8 as you're gonna get on Windows 10, or in this case, Windows 11. But I absolutely despise Windows 8, so I'm going to go to default or start menu. If you hit default, it's just going to do the default one and let Windows handle it, but you can force it to be just start menu if you want, which is what I'm going to do. And then furthermore, another thing, and I don't know why you would want to do this, but if you look at app list, if you click on the start button, this is your app list. These are all the applications that you have on your computer. Now, if you have a computer that you don't want people to have access to the app list for, and you just want the apps that they can run to be right here in the pin section, then you can change this to hide. And by hitting hide, then what you do is when you click on it, it's completely gone. However, you can get to it right here by clicking all apps. So this way, this kind of maybe simplifies the start menu a little bit. But if you want to completely get rid of it, instead of hide, you can go to disable altogether. And then when you click on the start menu, it's gone and it's just the pins. However, that's not going to work for me. So I'm going to go ahead and hit display so we can have the Windows 10 start menu back in its original form. Okay, so the next one is going to be Windows Switcher. And there's exactly one setting in here. You know, honestly, I think maybe they can throw that into maybe the other or advanced or something instead of having just one section for just the Windows Switcher. But you know, I'm not the one that made the program. So if we change this one to Windows 10, essentially all this is the switcher that you have to switch between programs. So if you click on this, I'm going to go ahead and run a couple programs right here. And as you can see, when I do this, it shows the programs there that you're using, and that's about it. If you change it to Windows 10, and then we have to go ahead and hit Restart File Explorer, it's going to take it a second to restart, and then we're actually going to have to launch File Explorer again too. But what it'll do essentially is you'll go ahead and hit Alt-Tab, and this will give you the more Windows 10 looking switch menu. But personally, kind of like the Windows 11 one. And that's the nice thing about this program, because you don't have to just accept one thing. You can make it look any way you want. You can do a hybrid look. That looks really good. Now, the next section is weather. And unfortunately, I'm not even going to go there because I couldn't get the program to work. Now, remember how I said that Explorer Patcher was really stable? Well, I played around with the weather icon for quite a bit, and I couldn't get it to work. This may be an issue with 25H2, or it just could be a problem with the weather icon app itself. When working properly, it essentially just gives you what looks like the Windows 10 widget menu, but it's limited to just weather. It's actually a pretty decent implementation of the clone of the Windows 10 widget app. But luckily, most people disable that anyway. So it doesn't really affect our goal as to make the system look like Windows 10, because chances are if you had Windows 10, you'd probably turn that off. But either way, hopefully in the future this is fixed, because it does actually look pretty decent when it's working. So let's jump back on the system and we'll move on to the next setting. Okay, so this might not be brand new for Explorer Patcher, but it's new to me. I didn't realize they added this, but this is the Spotlight section. And there's not a lot of settings in here, but there's enough to make it pretty useful. If you go right here, the Spotlight is the desktop background that changes on a schedule every once in a while. Like for instance, the background that I currently have right now is not the one that I had when I wrote the script for this video. It's the one that happened to change to this morning when I started this. However, sometimes sometimes people like having all of the access to the different pictures every day. It is actually kind of neat. Sometimes they have some really nice pictures set up there. However, sometimes you like the picture, but you don't want the stupid icon on your desktop. If that's the case, then you can click this button right here to hide the icon and it will go away completely. Also, the desktop context menu items, you can set this to different kind of information that you wanted. Like for instance, if you wanted, I'm gonna go ahead and just put all items right here. So if I right click on the desktop now, as you can see, it gives me the learn about this picture, essentially all the information that you would get from the icon. So in the instance, like you don't want to see the icon all the time, but you still like to know sometimes what the picture's of, you can right click and right there, it's Slovenia. So, all right. In fact, if we look at the picture, yeah, it's actually quite beautiful. I'd love to hang out there. But either way, now you can find out what it is by just right-clicking on the right-click menu right here. Also, the update frequency. By default, it's set to just let Windows decide the best schedule. And this is pretty good. I don't think it's a set schedule. I think it's just maybe random. I'm not sure exactly what the Windows schedule is. However, it allows Windows to take care of that completely. But you can change it as well. If you want it to change every minute, 5, 15, 20, half an hour, a couple hours, 6, 12, or once a day, you can make that change from right here as well. And personally, I think that's a good change for Explorer Patcher, giving us kind of that power over the Windows Spotlight. And if you don't like it, you can always just change your background to something else and use one of your own pictures. But sometimes people like pretty pictures. I don't know. I don't judge. Okay, so the next setting we're gonna go to is Other. So from Other, this is where kind of a lot of the settings that don't fit into other categories are located. However, some of them I think probably could have went into other categories, but that's okay. So the first one we're gonna look at is the Disable Rounded Corners, because obviously we need to disable rounded corners if we're gonna be trying to mimic Windows 10, right? So for that, it's all the way down, about halfway down right here. It's the Disable Rounded Corners for applications in Windows. So when you check on that, it's gonna ask you for user account control. Whenever it asks you for user account control, it's actually because it's writing to the registry, because that specific change requires you to write to the registry. So a lot of these changes could be made without Explorer Patcher at all, but Explorer Patcher just makes them easier. So now obviously, as you can see, we still have rounded corners even though we enabled that, but it's because these applications are still running. However, no, it's not, because they all of a sudden went square right as I was talking. So there you go. Now we have square corners and it looks a lot more like Windows 10. And finally, coming to Explorer Patcher. Now, I don't know if this was here before, and if it was, this was a massive oversight on my part, and I have to apologize. But if this is new, make this better. If the developer of this program is watching this, lean into this and give us more of this. But it's to prevent the following control panel links from being redirected to the settings app. All, yes, all, every single one of them, please do it. So now when you do this, essentially what's gonna happen now is, actually I clicked the wrong thing. If we go ahead and open up Control Panel. I'm gonna do that now, and then we're just gonna go to About. Everyone knows that if you click on the system link right here, it opens Settings. But now, if you click on the system link, it opens the system link like it's supposed to. Some of the things that they could add to this is right here. When I click on Devices and Printers, it opens Settings. And what you can actually do is you can right click and you can hit Open, and it will open Devices and Printers in Control Panel instead of in Settings. But it would still be really nice if we could just do that by clicking. Instead of, I don't know why I have to right click. It's just stupid. So now that our system is looking pretty close to Windows 10, there's a lot of Windows applications that have been dramatically changed in Windows 11. These include Notepad, Paint, and even the Task Manager has gone through major changes since Windows 10. So let's jump back on the system and I'll show you how to restore Windows 10 versions of those specific programs. So I've shown you how to do this before and nothing's new. Honestly, we can close Explorer Patcher now because we're pretty much done with that. However, this website right here is windows7games.com. And this isn't just some random sleazy website that has possible malware all over it. These programs are actually affiliated with WinArrow. They're a customization company. They make a program like Explorer Patcher, but it's a paid program. I think it's a paid program that will change the look and feel of different versions of Windows. And what this is for is it's kind of a collection of apps that allow you to restore the original versions of certain applications from within Windows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the Task Manager, because the Task Manager is probably the biggest change in Windows 10. So if you open this up, as you can see, the Windows 11 Task Manager has changed a lot. It's way different than it was before. And some people might want to have the old one back. And ironically, you don't have to use just the Windows 10 version of the Task Manager. Believe it or not, you can use the Windows 7 version of the Task Manager as well. However, I don't know about you, but the Windows 7 version of the Task Manager sucked. Once the Windows 10 one came out, it was a game changer. So I would stick with the Windows 10 one, but personally, I actually kind of like the Windows 11 one. However, there is a compatibility issue with 25H2, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we're going to go ahead and run this one real quick, and I'll show you the whole point on why it's so cool. So I'm going to click this big button for downloading the Windows 10 version of the Task Manager. It'll take a second. We'll go ahead and open it up. Now from here, we're going to extract it. And remember, the same thing can be done with Paint, the Notepad, and several other programs for Windows 11. But when we go ahead and run this, we're going to run it anyway, and it's going to install the old Task Manager onto the system. However, like I said, there is a bug in this program right now, and I'll show you what that is once we get it running. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck all of this stuff right here and hit finish, and we can close all of these windows right here. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and launch the Task Manager. If we hit yes, as you can see, this here is the old-fashioned Windows 10 Task Manager. But where's the compatibility issue? Well, I'll show you. If you right-click on your taskbar and you hit Task Manager, it doesn't work. It won't run. And I'm pretty sure this is a problem with 25H2. I don't think it's a problem with the program itself. I think it's 25H2. So if you want to use this, unfortunately, you have to leave a stupid icon on your desktop all the time in order to launch it, which if that's the case, it really makes it less useful than it is. But hopefully this program is in active development. As you can see, if you click on Windows Games, go back down to Task Manager, you can see on June 5th, 2025, they posted a note that it was updated to version 2.0 for better compatibility with version 24H2. So obviously they're still developing this application. So 25H2 is a new version of Windows. So obviously it just hasn't been updated yet, and hopefully it will be soon, and that'll be fixed. But otherwise, it gives you at least the option to have the Task Manager from Windows 10. But if you want to get rid of this compatibility problem and get your Task Manager icon to work again, the only way to do that is to open up your control panel. Unfortunately, it's either you have to have it or not have it. And to fix it, you're going to have to uninstall this Task Manager completely in order to restore your Windows 11 Task Manager, just like that. So you won't be able to use them both simultaneously, and you'll just have to pick one or the other. And if you decide Windows 10, then I would wait until they fix it. Okay, so we already talked about the background earlier. However, we're trying to make a system look like Windows 10, and this doesn't look like Windows 10. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jump on this link right here, and we're going to download a Windows 10 background. In fact, I'm going to download this one right here. I'm going to save this right here into my downloads folder. We're going to open it up. I'm going to double click on that. And once it opens, I'll right click. I'll hit set as background. And then there we have it. We have Windows 10 or Windows 11. I don't know. You tell me. Now, I told you way back at the beginning of the video that we were going to talk about some issues related to Windows Update. Now, this may or may not be a thing moving forward, but Explorer Patcher has come off essentially a war with Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't want programs like this to be able to modify the look and feel of Windows, and they used a lot of underhanded tactics to try to get Explorer Patcher to not work with Windows 11. And because of this, it has become kind of common practice to uninstall Explorer Patcher before you run Windows Update, especially on build updates. Because in the past, there have been a few times when updating Windows would cause major issues with Windows functioning the way you needed it to function due to compatibility problems with Explorer Patcher. So let's jump back on the system real quick, and I'll show you how to back up your settings for Explorer Patcher and uninstall it if the need arises. Okay, so from here, all you got to do is right click, go to Properties, just like we did before, and we want to go to Settings and Uninstall. And then from here, we want to go ahead and hit Export Current Settings. Documents is fine. This gives you Explorer Patcher and then the date that it happened. And we're gonna go ahead and hit yes. Hit yes again. And then from here, we can click this link right here to uninstall Explorer Patcher. Hit yes to that, and it will go ahead and go through the uninstall process like normal. It'll ask you if you want to reboot now. I'm gonna go ahead and hit no, obviously, because I'm doing a screen recording. And some of the other changes that we made are gonna stay the way that they were, but other than that, it should revert back to the stock Windows 11. Of course, the taskbar hasn't loaded yet again, and this is why I say I think this is a bug with Windows 11 itself, not with Explorer Patcher. But that is kind of funny. Oh, look at that. There it is. It finally showed up. So Explorer Patcher is completely removed from the computer and the bug is still taking place. So that proves my point that it's a bug with Windows, not Explorer Patcher. So as you can see, it's not hard to make your Windows 11 system almost indistinguishable from Windows 10. And the best of all, it's still under support, so you'll still get updates and everything. If I sat down with this system and started using it, I probably wouldn't even notice that it's Windows 11. Unfortunately though, like I said, there's just some things that we can't change. Like we can't go back to the Windows 10 settings app. But the Windows 10 settings app sucked anyway. Personally, I think the Windows 11 version of settings is way better. But I still spend the majority of my time in Control Panel anyway. So it is nice that Explorer Patcher has added the ability to disable some of the redirects from Control Panel to settings. However, there's a few more that they need to add. Like I showed you earlier, the devices would be a really nice one. But aside from a few exceptions, if you followed all of my steps, your system should mimic Windows 10 quite well. This is one of the reasons why I like Explorer Patcher so much. It just gives you so many options to modify a Windows system that I think competes pretty evenly with some more retail customization apps. I personally find it quite amazing that he's able to offer this program for completely free. But with that said, we've changed the look of Windows 11, but we didn't do much about the function of Windows 11. Both Windows 10 and Windows 11 have a tendency to spy on everything you do. So it might be a good idea to check out this video here where I show you how to make Windows 11 more private. So not only will your system look like Windows 10, but it'll be even more private than Windows 10 was. As always, you guys have a great day.